Hey everyone, this is Yeri, your host, in the very first episode of the new interview series, Arcane Threads. And today's topic is the Dualistic Universe, an exploration of polarity through astrology, science, and scripture. Now I'd like to introduce my guest, Jessie Morris, who is an artist and herbalist from the southeastern United States. I also tend to think of her as a biblical scholar because of her vast knowledge of scriptures, both from the Bible itself and from Gnostic Apocrypha. Jesse and I met several years ago in Northern California when we were both serving as personal assistants. Well, maybe not at the same time, but we were assistants to the famous rock and roll artist Stanley Mouse, who is most widely known for the Grateful Dead Skull and Roses art. And she and I just clicked right away and have been friends ever since then. And one of the things I greatly appreciate about her is that we can talk freely with each other about any conspiracy we perceive to be going on in this crazy world, no matter how deep, dark, and weird it gets. Jesse, welcome to the show. Do you have any opening words for our listeners today?
Hello, thank you so much for having me. This is really exciting to finally get to talk about these things in a different kind of not private context. And maybe there's someone out there that needs to hear some of these things to put some of their own little pieces of the puzzle together. And I also think that it'll be, what's the word I want? Therapeutic for both of us.
Definitely. And I just think it's very apropos that we're talking about this right now because we're in Gemini and the universe of duality is recognized in all major religions and philosophies. Astrology is based on polarities between opposing signs in a zodiac that involves feminine and masculine expressions and the polar opposite luminaries, the sun and the moon. And so in Gemini, we are definitely looking a lot at the themes of polarity and duality as its symbol has the two poles or the columns. And I just want to clarify that Jesse and I had been planning this talk for a couple of weeks prior to this recording, when just a couple of days ago, I had this YouTube video pop up in my feed that was specifically describing Gemini and the spiritual double. So I'm going to link this in the box below because I thought it was very timely, very interesting if you want to check it out. In that video, Gemini was also linked with the symbol of the Twin Towers and Solomon's Temple. And I'd like to add that it makes sense this symbol is shown on the second card of the tarot system, the High Priestess. Being the second card, she also represents a form of duality between the world of form itself and that of spirit. So now moving deeper into our topic, this is an analysis of duality in general, which is everywhere, all the time, in all things that we do and witness. It's part of life on earth, it's part of our experience here, the nature of our existence. And when it comes to scriptures, beginning with the book of Genesis, and God separated the light from the darkness, created the heavens and the earth. And there are two archetypal first humans in this book of Genesis, Adam and Eve, who ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, followed by the divine pair's first two sons, Cain and Abel, who fought with each other, leading to the first murder in recorded history. And there were another pair of twins, also Jacob and Esau, who also experienced conflicts, but theirs eventually led to reconciliation. Do you want to comment on that, Jesse? Any of that?
Well, Um, yeah, I think that it's interesting that the there's always two um, in the Bible. You know, everything I think in the Bible can be taken literally as well as metaphorically, and so I think the presence of the two sons, Cain and Abel, and also Jacob and Esau, just consistent throughout the Bible, I think it sets the tone for what this world is, which is split, and that everything requires discernment and understanding in order to make a decision, and that all of those decisions have consequences, and yeah.
Absolutely. And that brings me to the whole concept, or actually, the fact that we have a physical brain, an organ that's necessary to our ability to function, divided into right and left hemispheres. The right influencing creativity and intuition, and the left influencing logic and analysis. And thinking about how we have many body parts in pairs, we have two eyes, two ears, two arms, two legs, and how their functions depend on the brain, from neural pathways to movement control, and how exercises like, I don't know if you've heard of the cross crawl, that exercise, the exercise where you will link, say, your right hand to your left ankle or knee. And that's supposed to help improve coordination and cognitive function by activating both hemispheres of the brain. And so I just think that's really interesting. Also, I knew a hypnotherapist many years ago, and she used this technique to help people break out of patterns and beliefs that were limiting to them in some way. So again, it just points at the endless tug of war in our mind of this and that, and good and bad, and the conflicts that we all have inside of us, which is another thing that Gemini kind of represents in that sort of duality, the twins. It's like the twins are within us, within our own psyche. And I mean,
Absolutely.
yeah. And also just wanted to say uh, the schism that we are experiencing here, in our consciousness. It's the root of so much of our human suffering overall. So the saying that one is of two minds describes the confusion and inner conflict that we experience at different intervals in our lives. And also the idea of the doppelganger, or the ghostly double of a living person, or, as their evil twin, the evil
Yeah,
conscience, and also the idea of the devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other.
absolutely. Actually, me and Kyle, my boyfriend, we were speaking about this weekend, this exact thing, the
Mm,
spiritual doppelganger, um, and how it not only like can affect your perception of you, but others' perceptions of you. And then, um, what else did you say? The doppelganger, and oh, the angel and the devil, but also in Native American wisdom that there's the two wolves inside, and
hmm
that's
hmm
something he mentions a lot and we talk about. So it's always interesting how throughout different cultures that the same ideas are so profoundly present and important to understanding oneself. And you could also say the shadow self too, like Carl Jung, and you know, understanding your shadow self and not letting it destroy you, if you will.
Right. Absolutely. Um,
I
and
did.
mhm.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say I did um, look up in Genesis chapter 3. I've got some verses highlighted. If you want to go, whenever you do want to go back to Adam and Eve, I've got
Oh,
some
sure. Yeah, by
verses
all
open.
means. By all means.
Um, so when the serpent, says to the woman, and this is her decision. This is her. What do I do here?
Hmm
Um, but the serpent said to the woman, "You will not die, for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired and make one wise, she took of it its fruit and ate. And she also gave some of it to her husband who was with her, and he ate. Then the eyes of both were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they served fig leaves together and made loincloths for themselves. So immediately upon making that decision and siding, with the unknown, they immediately began suffering.
Good point. I think there are so many pieces, so many pearls in that passage that people have been trying to decipher and decode for a long time. And it's amazing how something that seems so simple and basic is actually very complex and relates to the undercurrent of our very existence. It's mind blowing, as the saying
Absolutely.
goes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so I was thinking about when I mentioned the schism within our consciousness, how widespread the phenomena of bipolar disorder has become. And Jesse, you and I have spoken about this recently as well. And I just saw a post today that stated the statistics have shown that bipolar has increased, especially in youth, in the past 30 years. And I mean, when I think about the times that we are living in and the propaganda and the, the current age, the current type of brainwashing that the youth are experiencing, it's not really a surprise. Do you want to speak to this?
Oh yeah, sure. I think that it I think that I'm not saying bipolar is not real, because quite obviously, it is, and people who are afflicted with it suffer quite tremendously. But I also think that, because I know me personally, I actually thought I was bipolar in college, because I would just be so emotionally dysregulated and so up and down and like so excited about some things and then just crash and hate myself and not understand why. And then also, I was very in tune with the fact that I was a Gemini, and that was just kind of like a Gemini trait. And I was like, oh, I guess maybe this is just how I am. But it kind of started making me think that I had some sort of multiple personality disorder to be so conflicted. And I then, over time, started getting a hold of like emotional regulation and realizing that I didn't have to let, the idea that Geminis are split be control me, because I have had people uh, like, oh, you're a Gemini, oh, you're crazy, oh, you're a Gemini, oh, I mean, seriously, like I have, like, I won't tell that story, but anyways, and it's just, I've seen this in a lot of people that I'm actually really close friends with over time, that they are so conflicted, and I realized about 3 or 4 years ago, I was like, I really think this is biblical. I think people who are aware of all of what is going on, and maybe they're not fully aware, but they're subconsciously aware, and they have been, manipulated by, like you said, propaganda and just all of these societal things, like things that, children shouldn't have to think about, even teenagers shouldn't have to think about. You
Hmm.
should just be, and, but like, David in the Psalms, he's back and forth the whole time, praising God and then saying, God, I'm so terrible. Why don't you just, get rid of me, take me out of here, but oh, and then you did, you took me out of the pit. And it's very up and down. And, Jeremiah is very up and down, also the prophet Jeremiah, because he's, God has shown him, and when God shows you things, or the universe, whatever, however you believe you are given knowledge from the greater source, that when you receive that knowledge and you are, even if you don't want to acknowledge it, I think that even is when it makes you even more conflicted, because but you suppress it, and so you're up and down and up and down. And um, there have been 3 friends that I have spoken with about this when they've been up and down, and told them, you know, I think this is biblical. I think, God has shown you things and you are conflicted like this because you're torn in this world, and this world is like you said, there's spiritual doppelgangers, and there's two wolves inside of you, and all of these things, and arguing with each other constantly. And when you like the cognitive dissonance of society versus like logos versus phasis, like what your logical mind would tell you as opposed to what your actual experience with it is. And I think being able to put those two things together is really helpful to overcome the up and down of things.
Hmm. Well said. Um, I just want to take one break to resolve a little tech issue that we're having. I'm going to
Okay.
pause. Okay.
I would maybe go back to when I quoted Genesis, and the decision and the confliction, and we're talking about the bipolar, because
Hmm.
I meant to go there. So there is a Ethiopic book called The Combat of Adam Against Satan, or the Book of Adam and Eve, and it speaks to what I thought was so profound about it is how it relates to this split kind of bipolar joy and suffering of current that we're talking about people being diagnosed with bipolar, or people who are in this conspiracy kind of alternate, almost you could call it an alternate society, acknowledging things other people choose to ignore or not even pay attention to, and the confliction that comes from that. And basically, in the book, um, once Adam and Eve commit the sin, they are so full of shame and guilt and for upset and mad with themselves that they're basically suicidal. And Adam,
Wow.
he tries to commit suicide, and I'm pretty sure one of them, if not both of them, do fall and actually hurt themselves pretty badly. And basically, God has to keep coming back to them to remind them, that He is, there for them, and even though they sinned, and they feel the guilt and shame that He's not going to abandon them. And they go and they live in this cave, and there's a point where I think Satan like sets the cave on fire, and they have to leave the cave. And I find that really interesting, as far as like psychologically, um, like DSM wise, because you've got people with personality disorders like BPD, narcissistic, CPTSD, uh, not, and also this applies to bipolar, or anyone who has suicidal ideation or anything, that you are in a shell in your cave, and that's where you're safe,
Hmm.
and but you live in there with your shame and your guilt, and you don't let anybody see it, and that's how you stay safe from the world. And then Satan's like, oh haha, just kidding, I'm going to burn you out of this area, of this shell, and you have to live fully exposed, um, in this world. And just the conflict of going back and forth from a shell to having to interact, and people sitting.
Incredible.
Mm-hmm,
It's like he destroyed the one refuge
mm-hmm.
or the symbol of. Now, some people would argue that the cave is where we live now, the realm of suffering and illusion, but it's interesting to look at it two different ways. Again, speaking of the duality. Thank you for
Yeah,
sharing
thank you.
that.
Absolutely.
Definitely. That was all very well said. And I also wanted to mention the physical layer, or the body double, the etheric double. In Theosophy, the invisible layer just outside of the physical body, which comprises part of the auric field, is referred to as the etheric double, and it closely resembles the physical body. And many types of energy work are specifically aiming at helping to bring the etheric and physical bodies back into balance, such as pranayama, which involves breathing through each nostril alternately, through Qigong and other types of inner martial arts, and through polarity therapy. You know, these are different types of methods. There tends to be a method that works better for certain types of people than others, because we all have different sorts of challenges and conflicts within us, and some of us are more in the body and some of us are more in the mind. Sometimes it weighs more, it's leaning more in one direction or the other. So there needs to be a specific type of modality or discipline that helps to restore that balance.
Absolutely, I agree with you. Um, for me personally, I'm an air sign, and I think that Qigong is really, really helpful and powerful for me because I can, feel the energy in my hands. And um, when I do that, when I do Qigong, I can hear that small, still inner voice better than any other time. And I know that it's not me, I mean, me, but I know that it's um, from the divine source. Because a lot of times, people, you know, again, the confliction in your head, you think you're being, told this one thing, and then like maybe it's, you know, maybe not a positive force trying to tell you something. But I feel like when you're doing practices like that, and you're really focused on just stillness in your mind, maybe you're moving your body, but it's not strenuous. It's like a release, and that when you do that, balancing, that it really helps you to be able to hear the truth inside.
I love that you brought that up. I think of the still small voice within, so easily missed in today's fast-paced, noisy world where so much is competing for our attention. And I think of that, whatever we want to call or assign to that small, still voice within, the real, true essence of who we are. And it has been called the divine spark. It has been called the higher self, the true self. In New Age jargon, often called the higher self or something like that, and a bit cheapened and a bit kind of misinterpreted in a lot of ways, because it's again so easy to miss. And when you have made contact with that aspect of yourself, when everything else around you slows down or stops, you enter the realm of silence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and some people can do that in meditation, and that's
Hmm.
great.
Hmm.
Um, but I find when I do meditate, it's more just I'm just disconnected, really.
Hmm.
And I feel like there's something about the Qigong and the activation of the meridians and the activation of your own energy field by just very slight movements. I think, and I started doing it because at the time I was injured, and I was doing a philosophy like 30-day challenge um, with someone online, and one of the things was you had to have 15 minutes of exercise. And I'm a dancer, I know you are too. And but at the time, I had just torn my hip labrum, although I didn't know what it was yet. But I couldn't do yoga, and I couldn't stretch. I couldn't do anything. So I learned the 8 pieces of brocade, or the 8 pieces of silk, and excuse me, and it just really helped me begin. That was basically the beginning of like my healing journey from really being split from toxic relationships, being split from, my own past decisions that I couldn't accept that I had made, you know, and um, that was really, that was about 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago, and that the Qigong really 100% has helped me. I don't know if I'll ever get there to full
Mm-hmm.
recovery, but you know what I mean. It's
Mm-hmm.
helped me ground myself really.
That's powerful medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you had mentioned to me earlier something that I think ties in well with this topic, which is, well, kind of indirectly, that Jesus in the secret book of James said something about how it's good to be full and empty at the same time or in lack at the same time. Could you describe that and how that might relate to um, that experience of finding or achieving wholeness in ourselves? You can share the quote if you'd like to.
Yeah, absolutely. So I during COVID and everything, I got real deep into um, well, I had Enoch was like the one thing that I had gotten into other than the main scriptures, which in turn just leads you to a whole new realm of things. And the secret book of James, I think I had found it online. There was a really great recording of it with a woman's voice, and but I couldn't find it physically. And when I finally did, it's just full of so many little gems, and one of them is to be full and lack at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and read. I'll just read that to you. Let's see, where should I start? Let's start with when Peter talks. Okay, here we go. Okay, understand this. And this is the chapter 2 in the secret book of James, and this is Jesus speaking. So understand this. The child, oh, and just so you guys know, the child of humanity in this is referring to Jesus. So understand this. The child of humanity healed you when you were sick, that you might reign. Woe to those who have found Woe to those who have found rest from their sickness, for they will be sick again. Blessed are those who have never been sick, but have known of rest before getting sick. The kingdom of God is yours. For this reason I tell you, be filled, and let there be no empty space within you, for otherwise the one who is to come can laugh at you. Then Peter said, Behold, 3 times you have told us to be filled, but we are already filled. The Savior answered and said, I have told you to be filled so that you may not lack anything, since those who are lacking will not be saved. Thus, to be filled is good, and to lack is bad. Yet, it is also good for you to be lacking, but bad for you to be filled. For those who are filled are also lacking, and one person who is lacking is not filled in the same way as another. The one who is filled, though, becomes sufficiently perfect. Hence, you should be lacking when you can be filled, and filled when you can be lacking, because then you can be filled even more. So be filled with spirit, but lacking in human reason. For human reason is only human reason, and the soul too is only soul. And I feel like, and I'm gonna, maybe I should keep going. No, I'm gonna stop there. That's the end of the chapter. And to me, that says that this is like the logos and the faces again, to not use that logical if then reasoning when you are making your own decisions, because human reason is only human reason, and the soul too is only the soul. So it's like he's saying you have to consider both, but don't rely solely on one or the other.
Right. That's a good point because logic has its place, just like the functioning of the left brain, it has its place. But again, it's kind of pointing to the whole thing of imbalance, right? When you lean too heavily on that, you don't leave room for the unexpected or the other side of life that is less visible to most people.
Hmm.
And
Exactly.
you can't have faith. You can't have a genuine faith in anything that's higher or truer. You just take everything at face value.
Hmm. And also, this is. Wait, no, is that the one? To be full and lag at the same time. No, that's not it. But what I think about the full and the lack at the same time and why it's so profound is, oh, the fasting from this world. He also
Hmm.
mentions, I'm not exactly sure, I have the quote on my notes over here, but I don't know where it is in this book, that, you know, you have to be appreciative and grateful. And this is the whole split thing again with the bipolar. Like, you're full of joy, but you're also full of suffering and weeping. You're full of, you accept that we're here on this plane, but you also accept that it's not real. And you accept that what you're after is the other world, and that, the kingdom ultimately. And that to attain that, you have to fast in lack of this world, even though you're consumed by it. You have to fast from it in order to gain, you know, your own personal awareness of who you really are, because otherwise it'll just eat you up and you won't even know, you'll never know who you are. And then you'll just come back.
Hmm. And that reminds me also of the Buddhist philosophy, in that in Buddhism, it's typically recognized that this is a realm of illusion, a realm of suffering, more so than anything else. It's also important to not get so swept away by either the pleasures of the physical existence or the sorrows, knowing that at any given time, there's going to be war, there's going to be conflict, but you should also stop to take care of your own house, your own family. You should stop to smell the roses. You should maintain an attitude of humility and gratitude, and also fostering compassion, which is the opposite of allowing yourself to take everything at face value. Oh, well, it is what it is, and ultimately become jaded or think that you have everything figured out. Just think, well, whatever will be, will be. And I mean, that's true on some level, but when we can take a step back and recognize that, like the Buddha recognized, and like Jesus and all of the great so-called ascended masters recognized, that this realm that we are currently inhabiting is one of immense suffering. And this is
Mm-hmm.
not the ultimate true reality. This is, like this is a simulacra, a fake world. And this is just like this was never meant to be a place that we even flourish in. And that kind of goes against the grain of popular belief, but um that I mean that's a whole other topic. But I mean, suffice to say that um I think that the religions that we are speaking of are more similar than not when it comes to the recognition of this being a realm that is both intensely um, challenging, but also illusory at the same time.
Yeah,
I don't know how else to say that.
absolutely. I think that's
Um,
pretty articulate,
yeah, I wanted
which is
to also.
confusing. It's
Hmm.
hard to
Yeah,
understand,
for sure.
and And maybe that's why a lot of people, even if they are subconsciously kind of aware of that, which I do believe a lot more people are now, like, considering that idea, like, oh, especially with all the declassified stuff that's come out from the CIA and all these things about,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it being a simulation, if you will, or, I mean, the Matrix, um, that that's creating, maybe even some more cognitive dissonance for people, which, as we all know, at first you get real angry when you find out the truth. So that's a whole nother conflict.
Definitely. And in Gnosticism, the world is definitely seen as a false one created by a lesser god designed to torment souls until they escape from the prison, the earthly prison, and return to the ultimate timeless one, often referred to as the Pleroma. And duality exists because this world is a replica of the truth, but a faulty one that rather hides truth by creating the chaos and confusion that we've been talking about.
Absolutely, total chaos. Um, yeah, here's another one that relates to what you're speaking on, from the Gospel of Thomas, and this is the beginning of it. And he said, "Whoever finds the interpretation of these sayings will not experience death." Jesus said, "Let him who seeks continue seeking until he finds. When he finds, he will become troubled. When he becomes troubled, he will become astonished, and he will rule over all." Um, and I don't think that means any kind of, like, better than you way. I think it just means you'll rule over all your own interior chaos and, frustrations and sufferings and everything, because
Mm-hmm.
once um, ultimately what's going on here, you can silence the you can try to silence. It's easier to silence the split, because ultimately, once you find the truth, you and accept it. When you
Mm-hmm.
accept it.
Right. It's almost like saying knowing is half the battle.
Yeah.
You still
Yes.
have to do the work,
Yeah.
from there. But we should all, in today's world where there are all these info gurus on the internet who
Mm-hmm.
think they know everything about everything, and then the people watching think they know everything about everything. It's like the blind leading the blind, right? It's like, okay, so you know that. What are you going to do about it?
Right.
That's the real ticket to freedom is the action that is taken. Um,
Mm-hmm. That is true.
yeah, it's a trip. Um, Another thing that there are two other myths. Actually, no, one is more of a myth. The other one is biblical. I wanted to mention Phanes, the primordial god, also known as protogenos of creation, and that Orphic cosmogony was hatched from a world egg encircled by the zodiac. And this deity was said to be both male and female, and thus a representation of duality, which I find very interesting. Again, this is a topic for another time, uh, but as above, so below is what I'm
Mm-hmm.
getting at. Um, and also, going back into the Bible, um, the two apostles, Peter and Paul, have often been referred to as spiritual twins, and they are depicted together in iconography in a brotherly embrace often, or just side by side. And it just so happens that their celebration is at the end of Gemini season, or just after it, according to the modern Western zodiac on June 29th. Um, I know, Jesse, that you have done a lot of research and contemplation on the how can I say the distortions around Paul. Do you
Mm-hmm.
want to share any thoughts about that?
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. So one thing, that I'll just preface the whole. I won't go into my whole theories about Paul, but I will preface it with that in Acts, they did indeed cast lots to determine who the new 12th apostle would be upon Judas's betrayal of Jesus. And his name was Matthias or Matthias. It was not Paul. Paul was never ordained by anyone to be an apostle other than by himself, saying that he witnessed, Jesus coming to him on his way to Damascus in the desert. And, to quote Jesus specifically, he says, if someone comes to you and says to you that they see me in the desert, believe it not. And I find it interesting that Peter, when he found Simon Peter, he told him that I will name you Peter, which means rock. Meaning, if you could go to the parables of Jesus, one might say, you build your house upon a stone, upon a rock, and it will be sturdy. And you build it upon the sands, and it will not. And one might say that Peter, being given that title by Jesus, is very profound. And then Paul going to Rome and such, and constantly seeking adoration for his knowledge that was given to him supposedly by this. And maybe something did appear to him in the desert. However, I personally do not believe that it was the Holy Spirit. And you could go on to say, back to this split doppelganger thing, that, maybe something was messing with him. Maybe he really was misled.
The desert is often known as a place of vipers and poisonous beasts and also demons in many world mythologies.
And the desert demons, really. That's so interesting because, that nobody witnessed this. Nobody witnessed it except for Paul. And there's countless verses in the Bible that say two witnesses. Upon having two witnesses, you can verify something to be true. Not one, but
Interesting.
two.
Right.
And so, and they include Paul and Peter together all the time. However, I don't really think they were homies. Like, I don't think they were not particularly. And so anyways, so I feel like, and there's also Isaiah, in Isaiah, he says, where is it? Let's see. I'm going to say this, but I'm not going to go into the whole thing because, again, that's like a whole nother bag of
Opening
tricks.
a can of worms.
Yes, can of worms. So
I'm here for it.
Right. So here we go. The people did not turn to him who struck them or seek the Lord of hosts. So the Lord cut off from Israel head and tail, palm branch, and reed in one day. Elders and dignitaries are the head, and prophets who teach lies are the tail. For those who led this people led them astray, and those who were led by them were left in confusion. And a friend of mine, who I haven't really spoken with in a while, but during COVID and all of this, we were researching all of these, Gnostic Bibles, and the whole Paul thing came up, which I was convicted by. It wasn't like I read somebody's information and thought Paul was false. It was something that the Holy Spirit convicted me while I was reading Paul's words because they sounded so pompous and arrogant. And we all know that if it is of God, it will be humble. In Matthew 18, I can't remember which verse it is, but basically it says, he who humbles himself like a little child, will see the kingdom of heaven. And that humility is ultimately, no matter what, even if you know everything or if you know nothing, if you're just a humble person, and I don't believe reading Paul's actual words and the way he phrases things, I don't think he's very humble. I think he compares himself to Jesus quite frequently.
It reminds me of so many people I've come across in today's New Age world.
Yeah. And you've got Peter, who ultimately, Peter did deny him 3 times, but he Jesus chose Peter to be with him in the garden, when they came and they took him. And I think that that's very, very significant for a lot of reasons. But ultimately, I think that, yes, Peter was shameful, but he felt the shame. And then because of that, that was like a lesson to him. Like, yeah, he did deny him, but that doesn't, and then Thomas was doubting. But I think, Thomas and Peter have, and obviously James too, have some of the most um, wisdom to share through their texts. And
Very interesting.
I think it's humble the way they share it.
Mm-hmm.
They're not trying to say, when they speak in the Gospels and the Gnostic and the canon alike. I feel they're all very. It's not done in a judgmental way. It's not done in a self-righteous way. It's just done in a very convicted way. Um, Whereas Paul, I feel like I don't know. I feel like a lot of what he says is kind of manipulative, and
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't ever give credit to Jesus. When everybody else is quoting Jesus, they quote Jesus and they give God the credit. But Paul, he doesn't. He was a Pharisee, and so he knew all the text. He knew what he was saying, and that what a lot of what he was saying was from elsewhere. But he never gives them the credit. But Jesus, when Jesus quotes the prophets, he quotes them and he gives them, you know, their due credit.
So a thought came into my mind as you were speaking, and I was just wondering, what if Paul is placed there on purpose
Mm-hmm.
for people to decode and understand the falsity that he represents?
100%. I really truly believe that because people will say one of the quotes that they say is that the whole Bible is all because it's a Paul quote. All
Mm-hmm.
scriptures are relevant for
Mm-hmm.
whatever reason,
Yeah.
and even if it's been messed up, the fact that it was messed up, there's a reason that they left this out. There's a quote and there's a verse in Jeremiah that they completely took out of a lot of translations because it's speaking to Jesus coming back and taking away the sacrifice and taking away the slaughter. And there's also a quote in Jeremiah where it talks about the false pen of the scribe. Um, it's Jeremiah 8:8. How can you say, we are wise and the law of the Lord is with us, when in fact the false pen of the scribes has made it into a lie? So that right there shows you that before the New Testament ever even happened or this ever got, taken to any Council of Nicaea, that it had in fact been tampered with by people on purpose to create confusion and confliction
Mm-hmm. Go
and
figure.
also discernment, because
Mm-hmm.
anybody, when you're reading something and you see two conflicting situations, I mean, I know for me, one of my things was, I just don't think that God would want Abraham to take his son to the top of the mountain and murder him, even though he didn't. I don't think he would even. I mean, that's like a temptation thing. That's like God doesn't tempt you to do negative. He might present you with a conflicting situation, but he's not going to specifically tell you to do the wrong thing and
Right.
see if you'll do it. That's not of God to me, personally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's it's that question, is it the devil that made me do it, or is it the angel telling me
Right?
to steer
It's
clear of that?
100%.
Well, that
100.
is definitely something to contemplate for those who want to delve in to their own biblical studies. And I forgot to give a disclaimer here that we would be going into some not more of a Gnostic view of the scriptures rather than the typical modern Christian view. But I think people get that. Most people who are here already understand what this is about. Also, you had another excellent line from, I don't want to mispronounce this. Sounds like Ezra, but what
Yeah,
was that?
I don't know.
Describing.
It's I never say it right either. It's like Esdras. Um,
That's okay. Just giving people an idea of where you got this and how that ties into the duality, the dual universe.
and I think when I found this, it stuck out to me so much because at the time I had come across a video that was speaking on two, well, it was a video speaking on two worlds, and it was also speaking on like the two bloodlines, and that Eve, when she ate the fruit, that it was actually that she was, and this is in a Gnostic gospel because it says specifically which angel it was that she slept with, but I don't remember the name because they're all very long names and
Yeah,
similar
yeah,
actually. And
that's okay.
I don't want to say the wrong one, but basically that she had that the fruit was intimacy and sex, and that she slept with this fallen angel and became pregnant with Cain, and then upon Adam, she told Adam what happened, and then they slept together, and then she became pregnant with Abel, and that would be why they're so different. Um,
Oh, interesting.
and also that, so anyways, so there was just a whole bunch of speak at the time around like split in two different situations, and in Ezra's, Ezra sees a lot of, he does a lot of fasting. Like he's told to go, like Uriel tells him to go out into the field and do like a 7-day flower fast where he's only supposed to eat the flowers of the field, and he's like, and if you do that, I will come back to you. So here's like obedience, like when God tells you to do something, like the inner voice, and you do it, you become rewarded. So he would go out and he would fast, and then Uriel would come back and he would say, "Oh, I had a dream," and then Uriel would kind of explain what the dream meant because he'd be confused. So this is Uriel talking to Ezra I'm pretty sure he's out in the field right now. Let's see. Here we go. I'm going to start actually a couple of verses before, if that's okay, because I think that'll
Sure.
just make more sense. Okay. I answered and said, O sovereign Lord, I said then and I say now, blessed are those who are alive and keep your commandments. But what of those for whom I prayed? For whom among the living is there that has not sinned, or who is there among mortals that has not transgressed your covenant? And now I see that the world will come with, no, sorry. And now I see that the world to come will bring delight to few, but torments to many. For an evil heart has grown up in us, which has alienated us from God and has brought us into corruption and the ways of death, and has shown us the paths of perdition and removed us far from life. And that not merely for a few, but for almost all who have been created. That's pretty profound. Um, and I will go back to, I have something else to say about that as well, um, after I get done here.
Mm-hmm.
So he answered me and said, listen to me, Ezra, and I will instruct you, and will admonish you once more. For this reason the Most High has made not one world, but two. Inasmuch you have said that the righteous are not many, but few, while the ungodly abound, hear the explanation for this. If you have just a few precious stones, will you add them to lead and clay? I said, Lord, how could that be? And he said to me, not only that, but ask the earth, and she will tell you. Notice that it says she. I find that really profound. I
Very
love in
interesting.
I love in the Apocrypha when little things that they've suppressed, like in modern Christianity, saying mother. I mean, honestly, they think saying
Mm-hmm.
Mother Earth
Mm-hmm.
is blasphemous, which you can clearly see right here. It is not. Um, and he said to me, not only that, but ask the earth, and she will tell you. Defer to her, and she will declare it to you. Say to her, you produce gold and silver and bronze, and also iron and lead and clay. But silver is more abundant than gold, and bronze than silver, and iron than bronze, and lead than iron, and clay than lead. Judge therefore which things are precious and desirable, those that are abundant or those that are rare. I said, O sovereign Lord, what is plentiful is of less worth, for what is more rare is more precious. He answered me and said, consider within yourself what you have thought, for the person who has what is hard to get rejoices more than the person who has what is plentiful. So also will the judgment that I have promised. For I will rejoice over the few who shall be saved, because it is they who have made my glory to prevail now, and through my name has now been honored. I will not grieve over the great number of those who perish, for it is they who are now like a mist, and are similar to a flame and smoke. They are set on fire to burn hotly and extinguished. I know it's kind of like morbid at the end, but um, I think that hold on, what did I want to say? Oh, for almost all who have been created, removed us far from life. What was I going to say? I forgot. I should have said
It's
something.
okay.
It's okay.
There's a lot to digest there. It's so much. What would you say? Well, it's hard to give like one single explanation, but what's your takeaway ultimately from the passage?
My takeaway from it is that there, I mean, it clearly states, and I guess I'm wrong, because I could have sworn this was Uriel talking to
Mm,
him, but the way that I think he might be having a vision of Jesus, because anytime in the Old Testament when they actually say that they see God, in my personal belief, I feel that it is like Jesus appearing to them to speak,
mm-hmm.
or the, Sophia, the Holy Spirit. Um, and so I guess, it says ask the earth what you need, need to survive here, kind of thing. Um, and like
Mm,
take only what you need to survive here,
that makes so much sense
because the more
because,
you take,
right, leading to greed.
mm-hmm,
And that ultimately creates more problems when people do that. And I'm also thinking, as you say that, about how we have everything that we need provided by the earth. We have every single medicine that we can find, and we have everything to build shelter. We have water. We have all of the elements. Did you want to say anything regarding the
mm,
elements or
yeah,
nature?
yeah. Since we're talking about Mother Earth and Father Sky, um, it's cool because in the past 6 months, all of the I've been sharing with my boyfriend, all of the like Tartarian energy,
Mm-hmm.
and that the Earth is positive, and that the sky is negative, and that the Earth is like a battery. And so you take from the Earth what you need, and you take from the sky what you need, um, and that. Oh wait, where was I going? Say again. Repeat what you just said again to me.
Oh, well, I like where you were going with this because I was just thinking about the elements and how we definitely have, the forces of, um, how can you say, like the masculine and the positive that show up
Mm,
into different ways. Like, I think you just mentioned that in astrology, we have this too, where the air and fire represent the masculine and the water and earth
yes.
represent the feminine.
Yes, exactly. And so um, that just reinforces the whole, mother. that Mother Earth is really Mother Earth, and that it's also like a balance of the material and the spiritual, as far as like us being batteries, and us balancing ourselves on this like very feminine, positively charged, you can get too much of one kind of charge, and that
Yeah.
you need to stay balanced in both, and that, air and fire. Something I learned that's really cool in I was taking a class with um, Phyllis D. Light, who is a Southern folk herbalist as well as many other things, but she specifically, this class was on the Southern folk herbalism, and she told a story about the crow and how, the crow, which lives in the air in the zenith, and that it used to be able to talk, and that it would come down to earth and tell us things from the heavens, and that the gods got mad at the crow for doing this, and well, the crow went up to bring fire down. That's when they got mad. So the crow goes up and brings the fire down to us, and they cursed it, basically like burned it, and took away its ability to talk, and it became black because of the soot of the fire. And so that fire, even though it's something that we create down here, that it's actually heavenly, and so is air. And so I find it interesting, just from those stories, not knowing anything,
Hmm.
that it directly relates to the way astrology views it, and also the way that the Tartarian Empire views it, and all of these things. And so it's just, it's kind of crazy to think about, honestly, the way, so disconnected, like none of these cultures talk to each other, on different sides of the world, and yet everyone came to the same ultimate realization.
That right there, what you just said, that is to me the ultimate proof in the pudding
Mm-hmm.
that that these are basic, how can you say this? These are not just random ideas that only came out of the scripture. We can find these ideas in every part of the world. The names are different and the cities are different and some of the details are different, but it's always the same explanation, the same threads running through, the same arcane threads running through.
Yeah.
You had mentioned to me something also, a passage about Mary.
Yes.
Okay.
I do have it quoted somewhere, but I don't want to waste time fussing with
No,
trying to
you don't
find
have to
this
find it. If you just want to explain the
live.
gist of it for the listeners, like what was that about, how it ties into everything we were saying about the elements and the masculine and the feminine.
So I think one thing that like is so off-putting to people about Christianity or religion, generally speaking, is that it says, oh, you have to know this or that, or oh, you have
Hmm.
to know Jesus's name. Like, well, that's ridiculous. Not everyone would know. And also, Jesus's name is different in all the different contexts and all the different languages, Aramaic, Greek, Hebrew. It's all different, and there's a whole argument about all of that,
Yeah.
which I got caught up in for a while, which is one of the reasons why I found out all this other stuff, is because I got caught up in what was wrong, and then slowly had to like humble myself and come out of that and realize I was wrong. And one thing that had always conflicted me when I wasn't a believer of Jesus, and even when I was, is that you had to, again, have this special knowledge or whatever. Well, it actually says in one of the Gnostic scriptures that, like, Jesus says, my spirit can fall upon anyone, and if they have an open heart and sound mind, and or not even sound mind, but oh, you're searching, and he'll show you. And so I felt like that specific passage really helped me to uh, not view. I think it might help other people to not, have not a distrust of religion, but like, oh, I'm not good enough, or I'm not a chosen one, or because
Mm-hmm.
all of those terms, and all of those things are very off-putting, and
Definitely.
or even that you have to, ascend
Like,
or
who are the
be,
chosen
yeah,
ones, really?
yeah,
There's this
exactly.
whole argument
Mm,
about that.
uh-huh, exactly. Or that you have to ascend. And so anyway, so in one of the Gnostic Gospels, and I do believe it is, oh man, which one is it? I think it's the book of, because there's a book of Thomas and there's a Gospel of Thomas. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's in the book of Thomas where he says, they're like, oh, Jesus is walking away with Mary Magdalene, and they're like, oh, where are you taking her? She's not like us or whatever. And he's like, well, I'm going to make her masculine. Or they said, oh, she's not masculine. And he's like, oh, I'm going to make her masculine. And I think what he meant by that was, I'm taking her out of the world. I'm going to teach her the teachings, because there are people in this day and age who I've seen online argue and say, see, Jesus is okay with
Uh,
transgenderism because he's talking about making Mary. And I'm like, no, this is
or
metaphorical.
subordinates of women.
Or yeah, yeah, right. And this is totally kind of metaphorical, but
Yeah.
also not, because he's talking about the air and the heaven and the opposite of the earth, which is feminine, and which is traps you. That's another one of the themes that led me searching for all of this double dualistic thing, was that
Mm-hmm.
I had heard this theory that, like, um, the feminine here is Satan's entrapment, or the evil one, whatever you would like to call him, and that is, and that excessive positive charge, excessive femininity, and excessive worldliness is what's going to, I mean, it's making you out of balance anyways. So I
Right,
think
right.
when Jesus said, I'm going to take her and I'm going to make her masculine, I think what he was saying was, because she was humble. Mary Magdalene was very humble. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, she did what she did, and they were going to stone her, and he said, which of you, has no sin in you? And then they all turned around and left, because that's the other thing of the church, is like, like a constant criticism and judgment and pointing fingers, and everybody should just mind their business. And I think that's kind of what Jesus was saying too, when they were like, why are you taking her? Why does she get to know this special stuff? Because she's a, whatever. And he's like, mind your business. I'm taking her to show her the truth. And because you could even see in them how they were becoming jealous, like, oh no, we're his disciples, like he gave us this special knowledge, and he's like, whoa, 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 like, anybody can have this that wants it, if they want to listen and they want to see the, you know and it's not even that you have to understand it all either, because God knows I don't.
I am
It
so glad you brought all of this up. I think a lot of people need to hear this, and it relates to so many different dynamics that I see people getting very lost and tangled up in. And there are so many points to it, including the judgment that we all judge, and we all get kind of entangled in that from time to time. But it's also the idea that people misunderstand about the whole negative and positive polarities and what they symbolize. We're not supposed to be taking that literally all the time. That's using the left brain a little too much. It's like you said, that this world represented by the feminine and those two elements of earth and water, the earth of flesh, the physical existence, and then the water, which is all of the emotion and the reflectiveness and you know, like
sympathy.
is sympathy and a lot of areas where we get trapped, honestly. And then the masculine would be the freedom from that, or the polar opposite would be not just intellect, but spirit, the realm of the spirit. But we all have these polarities within us. We have both. As long as we are living in this world in a meat suit, whether it's male or female, the anatomy doesn't matter. If you're here, you're part of this matrix. You're in the matrix of duality, period. And so, like you said, Jesse, we all have an opportunity. That is our birthright if we know how to access that inner spark of divinity within us to be able to free ourselves. It's a lot easier said than done, but the fact is, and that's what was pointed out, I think, in that scripture, is that we shouldn't be taking things so literal. We shouldn't be judging based on what we think, who we think someone is and whether or not they are worthy or capable. Like, who are you to judge? Who am I to judge who and what is, I know what I see and I can easily judge, oh, that's ridiculous or that's stupid. I mean, anyone can do that, right? But
Right.
at the end of the day, at the end of life, it's a journey that each of us takes and we make decisions that either keep us ensnared even more here or that liberate our spirits.
Right. Exactly. And, and the more focused you are on the material, earthly things, I mean, honestly, the more suffering you have. And like that's just, I mean, I'm not saying that's absolute fact, but I think pretty much anyone could see how it could be true. And that
Definitely.
focusing, and not even if you're thinking about afterlife, because nobody, I mean, none of us know. Who am I to judge and say, oh, this is absolutely what's going to happen at the end? However, um, I'm much more concerned with that than working out some good deals here on Earth or whatever.
Mm-hmm. I'm with you on that. Well, I think we covered a lot today, and this was a really great conversation. Is there anything else that you'd like to add in conclusion?
Um, yeah, I think we covered everything in my notes that I had, written down here. Um, I would say maybe just a suggestion of anyone, if anybody wanted to, you know, who maybe hasn't read any Gnostic Gospels, if they wanted to just start going into it, I would start with the revelation of Peter because it's Jesus speaking to Peter in the garden before he's taken, and it's like a very I think it's a very authentic, humbling, really good explanation of a lot of the concepts that are found throughout all of the Gnostic Gospels and the the Gospels in the canon alike. And I think it just kind of it kind of helps to sum up some understanding of like the splitness of the world and why some people seem to care and some people don't, or some
Mm-hmm.
people why some people and that it's not that just because these people have this knowledge or know these things, it doesn't make them any more special than anybody else, or it's just when you are obedient and you do listen to that little inner voice that it that that's what leads you
Mm-hmm.
home. That's what leads you home to the truth, and that it doesn't have anything to do with any kind of special knowledge or being better than anyone. It's just discernment and truth in yourself.
Beautifully well said. I don't think there's anything else I can add to that right now. It's just, I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge and I appreciate your compassionate and humble spirit, because I've learned a lot from you, and I really enjoy our conversations, and I hope there are many more like this to come.
Oh, me too. This was so great. Please have me back anytime. I would love to come.
Well, thank you. That concludes this first episode of Arcane Threads. I hope you'll tune in to the next one. Until then, take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.